Welcome everybody to the SRA webinar series. Hello. Um, we are going to record this. We are recording this, in fact, already. And we will be posting the recording, which will be a video, which will include the presentation itself and the audio overlay. It won't include the videos of John and myself while we're in the video. Yeah, it
that's a
removes
good
those.
thing, right? Yeah.
It's a good thing. So that will be posted on the SRA website, and it will be joining all of the past webinars. They're all recorded and all up there and all available for SRA members. So that's at sra.org. So take a look up there. There's a great resource, including one from John about a year ago.
Yeah.
So there's other things on the SRA website that you should take a look at. We have our upcoming annual meeting. It's in the first week or the beginning of December in New Orleans. So come on down for that. And there's a fantastic microsite that's linked to our main webpage that talks about all the presentations and goings on for that meeting. For today's webinar, we'll be answering the questions during the webinar and also at the end. So if you have questions during the webinar, go ahead and type them into your control panel, your GoToWebinar control panel. They'll pop up and I'll feed them to John and he'll be able to answer them. And like I said, do that anytime throughout the webinar. As far as controlling your webinar experience here, so there's a little grabby spot above the, sort of probably right here, above the presentation and below the video of me and of John. And you can grab that and slide that up or down if you want to see, if you want to make the webinar slides larger. So that's it for the intro, except to say that today's topic is writing guidelines for risk management, lessons and questions from 3 examples. And our presenter is John Lathrop, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Thanks.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm John Lathrop. I'm chair of the Applied Risk Management Specialty Group. And what I'm presenting today will be actually another step in what we've been doing. I hate to say it, it's over 2 years. It's, it's tough. It's tough. Sort of a rolling up and carrying forward from webinars and roundtables from the last 2 years. So let me see. I was changing these slides as of 20 minutes ago, so this will be a little bit of a voyage of discovery. If you see a surprised look in my face, it's good. There you go. All right. You can already see I've changed things a lot in the last day. Mechanics of the system for guidelines, because one of the things we discovered is the mechanics are important. That's how the guidelines would work. We can write guidelines and they can sit on a shelf. Oh, thank you very much. What good does that do? So over the last couple of days, I've been trying to figure out how do we get this so it really works? So I've even come up with a whole new name, Analysis Quality Challenge Process. Now, that's a mouthful. We got to work on that. By the way, I want to say in the announcement, I want to say, and I've benefited from interacting with other officers of the specialty group, that's Steve Ackerlin and Rob Waller and Willie Rudd. But they don't blame them for what you see today. This came out of my twisted and sad mind over the last couple of days. So we'll try it out. What am I doing here? Analysis Quality Challenge. I'm trying to get it grabby, speaking of grabby, so non-academic, in the field decision makers, risk management decision makers can relate to it and be able to be involved in it. Whoa, too many words. But yeah, as I said, over the last 2 years, you've been developing this system, taking a new perspective here. I'm going to spend the next few slides. You might find it tedious, but it has reason behind it. Goals, sub-goals, challenge, requirements. Why are we doing all this? Well, you'll see, because if you get all that straight in your head, you can see why this odd format is I have in the last, starting about the 10th slide. You see why I'm doing that. Okay, goal is to define and encourage a high level of analysis quality. And one of the things here, a pet peeve of mine, and you'll see it as it comes up, is you need to communicate to the decision makers. Every analysis falls short. I'm sorry, it just does. Between the assumption, scope, data limitations, analysis limitations, and uncertainty. And sometimes, not always, The analyst knows about those limitations, but very often I've found, I won't say
Yep.
every time, but
I have
very
my video
often
off and I'm
the
on
decision
my audio.
makers using the analysis are
I'm
not
on mute.
aware of the implications. And they tend to either have too much faith
No, did you hear me
in
doing
the
the intro?
numerical
Look at this guy. This
results,
guy
or
is
perhaps not enough.
hilarious.
So I want to set sub-goal. Set up a system of analysis, quality, definition, and evaluation. Note
As soon as we
here,
start,
I'm
I was on video
shifting from
too.
guidelines. And
There's all
don't
these
blame
people
the
out
other
there
guys for
watching.
this. This is
Like
all
100 and something
me.
people out there watching.
Sub-goal, as I
And
said,
I'm
to
on
make
video and you
decision
start.
makers aware of
I
all
always
those
give people like 2 minutes to get
considerations.
settled.
Terms they can
Right at the last
understand.
minute.
Many of them
And he
are
goes, well, we forgot
quite
2 minutes. And he
smart
started peppering me
and
with
effective,
questions.
but
Like,
they're
no, you're
not
gonna do
risk
something.
analysts, and they're often not
Like,
number crunchers.
thanks for waiting
And
until there were a bunch
we
of people
supposedly
John. He's like,
in
yep,
the
got it.
society and the specialty group and
Bet.
on this webinar know more about the number crunching and implications of assumptions and uncertainty in this particular way than decision makers often do. Here's another sub-goal, and this one I owe entirely to Steve Ackerland. He was a founder of the specialty group of applied risk management, and this is entirely his bullet verbatim: to more broadly engage risk management practitioners and stakeholders by more effectively promoting the use of risk analysis in advising risk management decisions. If that doesn't seem to flow naturally from the others, it's because it's from Steve. But there you go. Challenge. I've overwritten this. You already know this. Decision makers using analyses in support of risk management decisions aren't experts in that, but they need to take those implications account into their decision. How do we do that? Well, orientation. You define analysis quality in terms of several analysis quality challenges. Well, maybe there are better words. Then set up a system where any analysis to be used is evaluated on each of those challenges. Crucially, whenever an analysis does not meet a challenge, when it applies, evaluation must make clear to decision makers what the implications of that shortfall are. Oh, and this is another thing. I brought it up in some future slide. I forget where. The system shouldn't say, well, this analysis wasn't good enough. Erase it or don't listen to it. No, we all know. Everybody on this webinar knows. Every analysis is a compromise with reality, with what data is available, with a constantly shifting decision target. You know, we could spend all day on the limitations, but we don't want an evaluation process which says, well, this one didn't meet this, slide it down. It's this one doesn't meet this. Okay, that's fine, as long as you realize what those shortfalls are. So a lot of this, and you'll remember this word from some of the previous things, those of us who were back from previous things, is full disclosure. It's both, maybe I should word this better, both quality and full disclosure. Full disclosure to the decision maker, limitations of the analysis, trying out a new name, analysis quality challenge project. 4 words, probably too many words. So you guys can all help me with this. Yes, please do, by the way. Too many words. But I want to say what got me going on this was, in fact, 2, there's been more, a major modeling effort. I'll be careful here to not name names. I managed a third-party review, 1 year, $750,000, team of 8 very good people. And it's this giant model, very impressive, probabilistic risk assessment, all up the yin-yang, tens of thousands of scenarios and all this stuff. Oh, great. And they did a wonderful job. They're very competent people. Oh, but by the way, the model was taking 4 days on the mainframe to run for each one. Well, you know, so they were limited. They actually got themselves into that corner by having such a massive model. It was to rank several dozen risks for a federal agency, but in order to get it run in less than 5 days, they had to make a major scope limitations and a major simplifying and completely unrealistic assumption to make things work. And this didn't bother them. They're modelers. You're always doing that with the model. But the net effect was very important, because that scope limitation, looking at the several dozen risks that were ranked, the scope limitation, we all know it underestimated the risks of a subset of those several dozen risks. Well, those just have an asterisk. And the assumption which was, oh, gee, the constrained optimization is too hard. We'll just assume the constraint doesn't apply, which is not at all true. That also underestimated the risk of a known subset of those several dozen risks. Well, that should have been communicated to the decision makers in a clear way. And it wasn't. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. They're great people. I would hire them in a minute, but they were not able to get this across clearly to the client. The other thing, one of the last things, the project manager, very competent young man, said, okay, now let's see, with the review, we came up with many dozens of opportunities to improve performance. And he said, great, this is great. Thank you, John. Now let's see if the client will fund the improvements in the model. And at that time, it was very much in doubt. And this is a problem we should all be aware of. This is a very competent, major, important federal agency. But what this fellow is saying, they always want new numbers, and they want new numbers by Tuesday. Yeah, really, by Tuesday. And the idea that, oh no, we need to lay off for 6 months and improve the model, didn't fly, you know? Well, this is not good. We as practitioners should want to have a world where the client is as interested in model validity as we all, of course, are. Another major modeling effort, again, I'm being careful not to name names, even though the last time I said this in a forum, one of the model people called me up and said, John, I was very disappointed here to say that. Well, major modeling effort by a major modeling establishment for another major federal agency. It's wrong. It's wrong. It takes ordinal data scores, multiplies pairs of them and sums them. Anybody here who knows anything, that's not right. But the model results are presented to the funding agency. Funding agency was not made aware of these wrong metric operations and the implications for decision advice. I'm just telling you, we live in a world, maybe many of you don't, but the world I live in, there are very real problems and falling way behind it. Requirements, yeah, I'm sorry, there's too many, but we're all good systems analysts, right? So we always list requirements. It should actually be used. It should be effective, should represent a broad consensus of experts in the field, including people who know the realities of application, like I've just spent the last 5 minutes telling you. It needs to be transparent in the sense that a non-expert can understand the points of analysis, quality, challenges to be tested. They're not obscure quantum mechanical things. The degree to which evaluated analysis satisfies each analysis. We all know what would happen with many of us here at Society Risk Analysis. If left to our own devices, we'd have a 17-page guidance for how to do the evaluation. The evaluations would come back at 37 pages each. Oh, fine, thank you very much. It's not going to happen. And if it happens, it's not going to do any good. But you want to get across the transparency, the implications of any shortfalls to the decision maker, applicable as a full range of analyses, a broad range of evaluation costs. If you say, well, here it is. And of course, to conduct this evaluation, that'll be about, I don't know, $27,000. Well, no, that's just not going to work. In fact, I say here, maybe a little optimistically, maybe not. An evaluation should involve something as little as one of the originating analysts taking half a day to fill in a bunch of answers. I'll show you some examples later, and you can see if that's realistic or not. But the point is, again, from that thing from the earlier sort of example, oh, the client's not going to put things on hold for half a year to fix the model, and he's not going to spend more than a negligible amount of money on a review. Actually, in this case, the federal agency spent $750,000 on a third-party review because he had to. But many times you can say, oh, no, we don't have time for that. Most of us have been involved in projects where the final report is due and you're spending all night and weekend getting it done. The last thing you want to do is, oh, we got to add another 7 days for an analysis. Oh, and we need to charge the client another $7,000. You know, that's not a good thing. Let's see, next bullet down, process by which analysis quality challenges are defined and valued such that the process itself has an inherent authority and credibility. How do you do that? Oh, I don't know. If we do a good job and see if we can talk the Society for Risk Analysis, thank you very much for putting its seal of approval on it, it'll be authority and credibility. Like I just said, I mean, we live in a world where credibility is a problem. I now will upset about a tenth of the people on the webinar. Analytic hierarchy process. It actually is seriously methodologically flawed, and it's a favorite methodology in a lot of the federal agencies. Yeah, gosh, so we gotta work. How do we get this? So we know that AHP is critically flawed. I probably got myself into trouble there. Sorry. Next thing down, process to make it easy to consider all the challenges that apply. And most of the time, many of the challenges won't apply. Great. You just say, do not apply. End of story. Second to last bullet, I've mentioned this before. It's not a matter of the process should slam a project down and say, you shouldn't look at this. It's a matter of then full disclosure of all the ways the analysis falls short. Not even sure if falls short are the right word. You guys can help me here. Sometimes it falls short because the data's not there. Well, is that a shortfall? I mean, we all deal with that. So let's pick a better word. Another thing, this came up with a participant in one of the previous webinars, and so many things devolve into being a check the box thing. How can we do things so we don't devolve into the check box? One of the things you mentioned, you might remember from earlier things, how do we create a culture of analysis quality? Geez, culture of analysis quality. Are you kidding? What are you talking about? But we do, I think maybe we can. Okay, I'm delusional, live with it. By that, we mean promote analysis quality ethic where analysts and decision makers are aware of the analysis quality challenges. Should always put on stakeholders here. Steve Ackerman pointed that out. They're aware of the shortfalls and the implications, and they care about analysis quality. I mentioned earlier, here is this major federal agency, one of the most important ones, and they wanted the numbers on Tuesday, okay? And they didn't seem, I'm probably selling them short, but in interactions, they didn't seem to say, well, let's see, should we spend $800,000 to prove the validity of the, it wasn't there. And partly it's because a lot of them, bless their hearts, and they're typically quite intelligent, really, quite intelligent, just didn't have a grasp for the importance of the limitations. Most everybody on this webinar, I also do have grasps of the importance of the limitations of anything you do, and you have regret for that. I'm talking about get that across to the decision maker. Second bullet, analysis quality, clear and understandable. They're not specialists. Short bullet, yeah, I've said this already. Fourth bullet, setting up, a simple process for evaluation that everybody can understand. I mean, there's that, what is that? That DoD guidance for verification and validation. I don't remember what the numbers are. You can Google it. It's great. Well, it's very, very involved. And it takes an analyst squinting really hard and over an hour to understand what the document even says about what V and V is, verification, validation. Well, that's fine. And I'm glad they did it. It's a point of reference for all of us. Sorry, I don't remember its numbers. I'm going to tell you. You can email me and I'll give it to you. But that's not what we want here. Where the process is universally agreed upon. Well, how do you do that? Well, let me just talk to Catherine McComas and Terry Chauvin and maybe Tony Cox and say, shall we say Society for Risk Analysis is the universally agreed upon? They'll probably say no. They'll probably say, there's no way you're going to get something that SRA will say, we all agree on this. But, go in that direction. I don't know. Emphasize transparency and full disclosure. I suppose any specific standard of acceptability. I've told you this before. For example, there's never as much data quality or metadata as we would like. Okay, that's fine. That's the real world. So let's make sure the decision maker can understand what the limitations are. Analysis quality. So I say, time to really list them. Well, then, the whole first page is preface. Yeah, thank you very much, Don. Now comes the hard part. We have nicely laid out our goals, but it actually, I found it hard. I found it hard to concretely present the actual analysis quality challenges. And by concretely, I mean, so it's concrete, you know what it is, and it's in a practical form and is understandable. So I'm going to give you some drafts, and please don't laugh. Don't, well, you can laugh. You're muted. Okay. And go ahead and point. I don't see you, but don't laugh and point to other people before we get to the end of the presentation. Scholarly presentation was deadly dull. It would not engage either the analysis evaluator or reviewer, or worse yet, the decision maker or stakeholder. We've had a much more effective, to be less precise and less complete and less academic, to word our analysis challenges into general statements, questions, Preface 3, terse format is fine. All of these things you will see when you see them. Well, that will take 3 pages and 18 literature citations. Well, good for you. But we're not submitting an article to risk analysis. We're trying to get a practical, usable, clear, transparent to the non-specialist process going here. So, and I think a lot of you will remember this as an evolution from previous work. What I have 13 or 18, let's see, I have 18 of these challenges. And so the 5 highest ones are ones you might remember from the announcements for this webinar. Assumptions. We all know, but I think a lot of times the decision makers don't know, that everything has a list of significant assumptions. Every project analysis, a list of the assumptions. You got to list them. Okay, actually, many people do. That first big modeling project I mentioned, they were wonderful. The beginning of the report had 3 pages of assumptions. They listed them, but they didn't do the rest of it, which is describe those limitations versus the real world and describe the implications of those limitations for any decisions to be guided by the analysis. So that's the first part of it. Geez, John, that's pretty vague and general. Yeah, and but what are you going to do? Anybody here want to write down all assumptions that'll ever be used for any analysis? Not me. So you want to list those assumptions in a way specific to the analysis you're talking about. And this might be dumb. On the other hand, if we can list many example assumptions, limitations, and implications, it'll help both the reviewer figure out what he or she should do and the decision maker or stakeholder realize what's going on. I just had this idea late last night. Oh, great. Oh, thank you, John. By the way, that's a lot of work, right? And actually, that would be a fun thing. I didn't put this as a benefit, but one of the benefits from what we're talking about is it might get us all talking to each other about things. And, Applied Risk Management Specialty Group, that's group I'm chair, quote unquote chair of, we can take a draft of this and then we'll pass it around and say, please, anybody else add to example assumptions, limitations, and implications. Every one of these, well, it gets boring and tedious. So list many examples, scope issues, and implications. Yeah, okay, assumption. Second, scope. Scope analysis. As an example, I said before, oh, it's just too hard to include these other consequences. Yeah, but it makes a huge difference in the relative risk. So list all significant scope boundary issues. Each issue describe its implications for decision and advice. If the effect, for example, that's the one I mentioned, if you have the effect of leaving that out of the scope, it's okay, except when we rank these risks. Oh, risks 5, 7, 9, and 12 are underestimated relative to the other ones. Decision makers should know that. Again, we can list examples. Again, they say, John, this is never going to work. It's too general. Well, let's try. Data limitations, same idea. I won't bore you in minutes. It's never as much data as we want. List the significant data limitation issue. Actually, those of us on this webinar and the competent sort of analysts, which we're familiar with, know by the end of the project, geez, we have a real data limitation here. It just is. That's the real world. That's the world we all live in. Great, that's fine. Love it. Describe those implications and their implications for the decision maker. Typical examples, data limiter, understanding the uncertainty in the results. We're only able to collect information for people in Kansas. Nothing against Kansas, but that's going to underestimate the uncertainty in the results in a broader scope. Oh, the other thing, and I think we've all come across this too. Well, we have this data, but geez, everything's changing so hard. By February of next year, we might have future data that'll be different. That's fine. We all know that. We live in that world. Make sure the decision maker realizes that. Analysis limitation, same thing. It's all parallel. We all know it. Well, this is analysis. It is limited in that it can only look at first order effects. Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, what if second order effects are important? Well, we just can't grab that in the model. Okay, that's fine. Describe the implications for decision advice. Typically, I think many of us would say one of the big things that often happens is whatever we do, however hard we do it, we understate the actual real world uncertainty. Okay, that's fine. Real world, let's make sure the decision maker knows that. Hence this fifth one, uncertainty. I'm not talking about, Garrick and Low and Garrick, whatever. I'm sorry. Risk is probability consequence pairs. That's not the uncertainty I'm talking about. I'm talking about the error bars around the results. For instance, in this one, the first huge model event ranked all these risks. Well, they did actually a pretty good job of error bars, and the error bars had such that the rankings overlapped by quite a bit. That's good to know too. On the other hand, even there, the error bars didn't actually take into account all the uncertainty. And this often happens. Sometimes I think error bars put you behind because the decision maker is, oh, well, look at the error bars. Wow, they're pretty big. And wow, these modelers did a great job of capturing the uncertainty. Well, in the case of the other model and other things, often the error bars don't actually catch all the uncertainty. How about the uncertainty that the model's wrong? Whoops. That's often the case. Well, the error bars often don't capture that. And particular sorts of uncertainty, epistemological uncertainty versus aleatory uncertainty, often those both aren't caught in error bars. Well, that's fine. Communicate it. So we're getting bored with this thing about always list many examples, and it doesn't fit on the future slide. So just pretend everything I tell you will always have list of examples and so on and so on. Capture. Now these are, I say the second level, just as important as the first level, a tiny bit more specific. Capturing the risk generating process. I don't know how many of you have done this. Well, okay, we've set this up so that A causes B, causes C, causes D. Very good. Oh, wait a minute. The risk generating process involves other things too, other causal paths. That's fine. Just describe it. List the significant issues where the analysis does not capture all elements of the risk generating. I've even found that's a good thing to do in a project. After we're in the project, we've developed our causal flowcharts and modeling. Wait a minute. Let's back up. Look at the real world. Gee, in the real world, here's this other thing that causes this risk. A lot of the risk is caused after the things have left the factory and are on the road on the way to the client. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, that's fine. Just realize that, describe its implications, let the decision maker know. By the way, we've only taken into account the risks involved in manufacturing. We haven't described the risks in transportation. Characterizing the risk event space. I don't know how many of you have got this. Wow, gee, we got this model, we're working at all that, and we have all these risk events. Wait a minute. Those aren't all the risk events. What if a terrorist comes in and does something? That's not in our model. Well, yeah, but it could happen. It could happen tomorrow. Let's make sure we describe the risk event space in its most complete form, shortfalls and implications. I'm hurrying up here because the time is slipping by, and I'm sorry. I'm fire hosing you with all this stuff, but I want to get you a sense of, in fact, what's one of the senses is, gee, it's nice to sit back and say, yeah, we'll specify a bunch of challenges, and it will be a good thing. We'll all be doing good work. Well, actually, it's hard to specify the challenges in a way that captures everything that can happen, because so many things can happen, and have it feasible and not involve $37,000 in person months to do. Oh, and worse yet, to have, the decision maker has to be a Nobel laureate or you're not going to understand this. It's not good. It's not what we want. Several, I often get a laugh and I make pre-presentations. Real thing you want to have is PIFSNODL, preparedness for scenarios not on the list. Well, everybody laughs, and you're all muted, so I can't hear you laughing now. And there's got to be a better word. But let's face it, a lot of times in models, in risk assessments, risk analyses we work with, a real bugaboo is the scenarios not on the list. In fact, as I think we know, somebody once said, I forget who, tried Googling it, couldn't find it. It's impossible to list all the things that you have not considered. Yeah, very good. And that's almost humorous, but wait a minute. It's really important because sometimes, well, it is the scenario not on the list that gets you, contributes to the, it does more than contribute to the risk. It contributes to the unassessed risk, sort of by definition. So you want to make the decision maker with it. By the way, this risk analysis we're giving you did a valid and correct and mathematical crunch the numbers, error bars, everything for every scenario on our list. By the way, there might be scenarios not on our list. So then you say, well, what are you going to do, John? You just told me you can't list scenarios not on the list. Yeah, but sometimes you can list the nature of general characteristics of scenarios not on the list. You know, I don't know what it could possibly be, but an insider inside this process could have a bad day, or maybe the insider is a terrorist, you know, and so we don't know exactly what would happen. We can't really list a scenario, but we do know that there's significant risk management sort of issues raised by those scenarios not on the list. And gee, well, what are the implications for decision advice? Well, in the cases I mentioned, can we do something to make the process more resilient to inattentive production workers? We don't know what the inattentive production workers might do, but can we make it more resilient to that? I'm struggling here, but you get the idea. If you take a little bit of time to talk about what could be the scenarios not on the list and then list its implications, that's a good thing to get across to the decision makers. By the way, our recommendation is this, but we could be wrong. Well, you know, I don't like telling the decision maker you could be wrong. Okay, wrong is the wrong word. But here's what we could do. It's the best we could do given the scenarios we could list. And by the way, we recognize the characteristic of the scenarios not on the list. And these are our recommendations for how to deal with those. Number 9, and this so rarely happens. I think many people on this webinar realize it so rarely happens. We have this analysis. It's the one we do in our particular department of this particular university, and that's what we do. Well, sometimes there are alternative analyses that could be applied. You want to compile the pros and cons of those and explain why the chosen analysis was chosen, present the implications for that. Well, you think, John, that's unrealistic. Well, I'm not talking about doing a detailed and extensive sort of analysis of alternative analyses. What I'm talking about is we live in a world where most people in this phone call know there's always another way to crank the numbers. But often the decision makers, bless their hearts, don't. And they say, wow, we've hired this prestigious consulting firm with all these PhDs and all this stuff, and they've done this analysis. Wow, this is great. Thank you very much. We'll look at the analysis. And nobody says, you know, by the way, if you had hired this other firm or gone to this other university, they would have done a different analysis. And we can't, nobody's going to fund multiple analysis sort of thing. Actually, some people might. But the decision makers should know that the results they are seeing, decision maker and stakeholders should know the results they are seeing are a result of one analysis, and another analysis could have been chosen. That's not always true, but very often it is. Now, the 10th one is a little tricky. I develop robust and resilient strategies. I've alluded to that in the scenarios not on the list. Oh, wait a minute. Typically, I don't know. Sometimes the risk analyst is not in charge of developing robust and resilient strategies. He's involved in evaluating risk, analyzing risk. Yeah, but you know, I don't mean to be too extensive in patting ourselves on the back, but very often us risk analysts actually have a better idea of at least suggestions for robust and resilient strategies then the decision makers, bless their hearts. So it's never a bad idea, again, in this evaluation of challenges, to have one of the sections, half a page, maybe a page, half a page to a page, to talk about, well, you know, the uncertainties are such, and the scenarios not on the list are such, and alternative analyses are such that, whew, you know, it's probably a good idea to consider ways to introduce a robustness and resilience into your courses of action and suggest those decisions. Again, I'm probably not getting this across very well, but the idea is not that the risk analyst delivering to the decision maker is going to make himself or herself a expert in robust and resilient strategy, but in doing that, in taking things to that direction, you signal to the decision maker and stakeholder that we live in a world where unexpected things can happen. It's never a bad idea to say, could we figure out ways that are more robust? The rest of it, you'll be relieved to hear. I'm going to shorten up things here, partly because the nature of the challenges are such that it sort of shortens up. So what do I happen to do besides leave out 2 spaces in the title there? I'm a terrorism risk management analyst at Lawrence Livermore much of the time. And actually, I should keep changing. I should be national security risk analyst at Livermore. So number 11 is thrown in. You think, well, that's pretty parochial. Actually, it's not parochial. There's a number of risk management challenges that involve adversaries. And so then the underlined and bolded things you want to ask, because I've seen very often analyses, I won't name them, fall way short. Are the adversaries characterized in models in the best way? Are the adversary models populated using the best available SNEs? Yeah, include adversary reactions. We all know the famous study by Greg Parnell chairing the NAS study of the BITRA, I guess, biological terrorism risk assessment. And that review, I actually don't fully agree with it, but oh, you shouldn't use this model because they didn't include the responsive, the reactive adversary, adaptive adversary. Well, you know, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, but you should consider that. Adversaries can get smarter and more capable. You do that. Adversary, we talk about black swans. We all know black swans. Don't have to gloss that. Well, the adversary is deliberately, we can suppose, is deliberately figuring out what scenarios are not on the defender's list. So the next ones are almost, they're boring. Oh, I'm sorry, boring but important. Data availability and collection was a systematic effort executed to identify and collect the best available data, and you fill in all the other text. Data validation, data management, you can read it. Was the data validated using best available? You know, the data managed. You say, John, you've gotten too general here. What do you mean? What is our standard going to be for best available? Best available. Well, that's tough, but you want to consider that and see if best available was done. And partly because you want to do that, partly is, again, you want to signal to the decision maker that validation is important, and you want to get the analyst a little bit on the defensive, saying, "Oh boy, you know, I better give more than lip service to data validation and data management and data QA QC 13.4.15 model and analysis validation." Whoa, I think most of us know that's really hard. Analysis validation, just to refresh people's memory. Verification is, did you get the math right and the internal stuff right? Validation is, does it tell you things about how the real world really works, roughly speaking? Well, that's huge. And again, you want to consider that. And you want to have the review challenge by challenge, challenge number 16. You want to force the evaluator to consider that, ask around about that, write that up. And again, part of this is signaling to the decision maker, oh yeah, analysis of validation is very important. And these guys are telling me that it's been validated, but I see in the language that, maybe more could have been done in validation. Model analysis documentation, a favorite thing, and this is almost a subtle thing. I'm not sure I can express it well, but if a model is not well documented in a way that can be adequately reviewed by a third party, then it's not a good model. I'm sorry. Oh, no, this is a very good model. It's just not documented so a third party can understand it. In fact, our model is so sophisticated, nobody can understand. I'm sorry. That's not a good model. If the model can't be third party reviewed, if it can't be documented such that it is third party reviewed, it is not a good model. Number 18, budget. Was the budget adequate to valid execution and review of the analysis? Oh, that's touchy. We all know that's touchy. The analyst always wants to spend much more money than the client does. What we're trying to get out here is the idea that we want to at least cast light on and signal to the decision maker the situation is, well, this is a big model and it should have been funded at $400,000, but it was funded at $100,000. So we did the best we could, and we didn't really have enough funding. We worked as hard as we could. In fact, we donated time. I think many of us have donated time. But we just didn't have time to actually do the model again in the validated, verified, validated, and documented level. We just didn't. It's a $400,000 problem. And we gave you the best possible answer we could at $100,000. We gave you the best possible answer within that budget. But frankly, it's not where it should be. Oh, now look, this is fun. Now look at that thing at the bottom. Now we can vote. Brett Burke, he keeps coming up with all these great tools, and one of them is that, John. In fact, I was going to ask him, gee, Brett, can you run a poll? Before I even got to that, I said, hey, John, by the way, we can run a poll. So here we go. Now, let's say everybody knows the top two lines here. And what Lathrop's written down here, holy crap, much work remains before we're happy with this quality challenge problem. But once we're happy, you always want to say, we're all good systems analysts, right? Any good systems analyst is saying, where are we going with this? As any good system, it starts, like I said, well, we have our goals and sub-goals and challenge and requirements. Oh, good. But where are we going with this? Again, we don't want to have something that sits on a shelf. I'm sure, given enough time, now that you see these other slides, well, this is hard to do. Given enough time, we can do a pretty good job on analysis, quality, challenge, process. And it'd be a nice thing, maybe even fit it into, 40 pages. Whew, yeah, maybe. And I'll put it right up on the shelf, right up there with those other things up on the shelf. Wow, well, that'll do a lot of good. It takes up a half inch on the bookshelf. Great. So what I pose here, in fact, you'll see, things are, let's say, in flux enough that I changed words on the slides that I didn't tell Brett about when he populated the poll. But, let me just talk it through. And then Brett will throw a switch and you'll all be looking at the poll. And I'm really looking forward to this, actually. In fact, you can see my evil, nefarious plan here is, even though all this is quite a bit, under discussion and underdeveloped and undergoing development, so on and so on, I want to get a sense of where I might be going with this. And then when I walk into the offices of the officers of Society for Risk Analysis, John, you're just like, oh, what drug are you on? I'm not on a drug, maybe I am, but here, look, we took this poll and here are the results of the poll. So what are we going to do with this? Suppose we get it done in a way that most people, maybe not all people, most people on this webinar are happy with. So I guess, I hope we can talk into Society for Risk Analysis to publish it as a link on the website. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Maybe not if we can never agree, everybody, on what should be on it. So, but let's just say we can publish it on the SRA website. By the way, the website is getting better and better. Have you noticed? Somebody's working on that, and it's, even whether or not you compare it with websites of other professional organizations, this is getting better and better. How about those pictures of New Orleans? Yeah, okay. So anyway, So in addition to that, what should we do? Now, this time, John Lathrop is getting a little Napoleonic delusional, but bear with me, okay? Bear with me. We can, in addition, publish it in every issue of Risk Analysis. Tony Cox, what do you mean? It's going to take 2 pages, 3 pages every issue? Are you just nuts? Or maybe, well, of course we can put that in. In the front or in the back. I'd vote for the front, but anyway. And then you see how that puts a different light on the journal. Now, maybe it's a light that the society wouldn't want to have. I don't know, but will you vote for that? In fact, the way Brett has set it up, you can vote for all 5 or 1 or 2 or none. Thank you very much. B, aggressively insist or require, that any paper submitted to risk analysis be reviewed through this process. Build it into the referee review. Something of the way Brett had to crank the words down. I forget how he worded it, Brett, because you could either say, let's just say, aggressively insist or require. C, aggressively insist or require that any presentation submitted the SRA for December will be reviewed through this process. John, that's just not going to happen. People submit an abstract in March, whatever it is, always amazingly early, and then they write their presentation between Thanksgiving and maybe that's just me. But anyway, maybe that's unrealistic, or maybe it's not. Hey, it could even apply to poster. D, aggressively insist to require that any poster submitted. Now, both the presentation, you don't have enough time. 20 minutes is just insane anyway. You don't have time during the presentation to review the review. So yeah, I'm not going to do that. 20 minutes is insane anyway. But we want to insist that review be conducted and submitted with the presentation. Yeah, it's problematic. Again, I don't submit my abstract in March. I don't know. We have to work out the details. Same for the poster. There's not enough room. You can tell by looking at the posters. The poor poster person has used every square inch of his or her poster. You're not going to say, and we want you to dedicate a half a square foot of your poster to the review. No, it's a review be conducted or submitted. Boy, I don't know. Looking at these, I think maybe part of what I'm saying is, I don't know what the best thing is to do. Go ahead. You'll see my email address at the last slide. Tell me what your ideas are. My ideas, in some case, might not be very practical. Okay, E, set up. Now, this is where I get really off the rails. Lathrop is off the rails again, but maybe not. Set up a process of Society for Risk Analysis accreditation. And that's something that, in an ideal world, maybe in 5 years, we get to the point where a consulting firm says, by the way, when we do this analysis for you, we will have it checked out, but the Society for Risk Analysis seal approval is a stupid name. Society for Risk Analysis will review it and note that it passed successfully its analysis quality challenge process. Wow. You can see here, I'm really struggling. But wouldn't that be a neat thing? Remember one of our goals, I forgot what it was, too many slides ago, but we want to make the world a better place. I'm sorry, I have to say that I live in Silicon Valley. We want to make the world a better place, but we do want to make the world a place where risk analyses meet the standards that I've been talking about here, both doing the best possible job with the data and analysis and validation and verification and full disclosure to the decision. We really want to live in that world. Risk analyses matter. Risk analyses, many of them matter a great deal. So you want to have a world where those analyses are done according to, at least in compliance with a lot of the previous slides. How do we do that? Well, one way is to, let's have this accreditation process. What would it involve? Again, not a big thing. This is not going to happen, John. This is not going to, well, maybe it could. If we say, by the way, It's not going to be a charitable activity by Society of Risk Analysis. It's going to charge $2,000, $5,000, maybe $10,000. I don't know. So the costs are covered, and Society of Risk Analysis would have a panel of people, and they would say, okay, we have this application for our seal of approval. Any of you willing to do that? And we'll pay you $125 an hour. And just get that going. I don't know. Say, John, that's a little crazy. No, it's not crazy. Society for Risk Analysis is one of the best academic journals on the planet. Thank you very much, Tony Cox. And that has editors and reviewers. This is completely feasible too. Now, look at this red thing at the bottom. Now we can vote. Over to you, Brett.
Okay, let's see what happens when I click on launch poll here.
Certain experimental nature here. Got it. Poll open.
Yeah. So the attendees should see the poll and should be able to click on answers. Now, John, are you seeing the results?
No, but maybe I should click on something.
If you look in your GoToWebinar control panel, I think you'll be able to see results. If you have a section there that says polls, but we've got 38% of people have voted so far.
Wow.
44, 47.
Okay.
50.
Okay. Wow. I mean, how many people are on the webinar?
Oh, wait, we've got 62% voted. We're making good progress. 71%.
I hope you all vote on November 6th. Man, I'm going to take you by the neck if you don't and I find out. I will come after you.
That statement slowed the voting down.
Oops, I should just shut up. People are telling me all that. John, stop talking. Yes, right.
All right, we're at 76% and 78% now. So why don't you give everybody another maybe 5 seconds or so, and we'll.
Yeah. No.
81.
I'm tickled. I am tickled. Delighted.
Okay, we have 81% voted. I'm going to click on close poll.
Has it sort of asymptoted? Has it asymptoted or something?
So yes, it has.
Yeah, okay, great.
And so
and 81 is great. I'm just delighted. Yeah.
Let me read you the results, since I don't think you're seeing them, and then I will close the poll because I don't know what's going to happen when I close the poll. They've changed the software a little bit.
Okay, great.
We have 54% for the first one, 54% for the second one, 19% for requiring the SRA presentations be reviewed, 15% for the posters, and 27. Sorry?
That is 1-5?
1-5, correct, and 27% for set up an SRA accreditation, the last one.
Wow.
So I'm going to hit close poll and we'll see what happens here.
All right.
All right, you're back.
That is great. I just want to say I am delighted. I am delighted. And the results, A, B, C, D, trail off some, which we would expect. And I'm just
look, there you go. Sorry. There's the results.
Okay.
I don't know if you see them or not.
I don't happen to.
Okay, that's all right. I've shared them with the folks.
Yeah, great.
Yep. Okay.
I am just delighted. Like I said, the results A, B, C, D, the first 4 trail off like I expected them would, and 27% have liked the idea of the accreditation. That is wonderful. I'm so glad. And Brett, by the way, I'm so glad you got this poll thing going. And that was great. Thank you so much, the 81% of you who responded. And I'm just delighted in the percent of response too.
Ultimately ended with 84%.
That is amazing. Once again, remember November 6th. All right. Okay. And you'll all be delighted here within a couple of slides at the end. Okay, so here we go. Little problem here. How to get this quality challenge process written up in some form. Now I always overpromise, but we at the Applied Risk Management Specialty Group, especially since I'm stepping down as chair in December and then I'll have more time to spend on this, I'll take a lead in drafting the guidelines. Lead. Anybody else is welcome to take a lead. My guess is people won't take a lead until we take a lead. We will do that, but we're just the Applied Risk Management Specialty Group. There's a lot. Last time that keeps growing. I think there are 17 now specialty groups in the society. By the way, almost every one of them is very interesting. Actually, every one of them is interesting. Sorry. We don't know what issues upon these, I say guidelines, challenges. I got a glossary problem here. We don't know what challenges are specific to the scopes of the other specialty groups. They do. They should be writing their quality challenges, maybe independently, fully siloed, or maybe not fully siloed. So third bullet, what we proposed it is, we'll finish our own attempt, notice that, own attempt at guidelines. Again, I'm sorry, I should have at challenges. When you see guidelines, at challenges, making them as generally applicable as possible, circulate them to all the other specialty group chairs. You see how ready we are to ask other people to do work? Yeah, that's what we do. Depending on those comments, we'll either propose a Boolean union of all the guidelines. That is actually intriguing. To have, here are a set of challenges that apply across all specialty groups. And then maybe I say or suggest separate challenges for each specialty group, or. I think it's really neat. The idea that the 17 specialty groups might have a Boolean union of challenges, and then maybe it is, come to the event, more just thinking out loud, never a good idea. You have the Boolean union of things that apply to all 17, and then each of the 17 have their own say, by the way, in addition, here are challenges specific to our area that nobody else could possibly care about that. Again, I'm asking for your comments on that. We'll see how that goes. And now you'll be so delighted. Last slide. In closing, if we can pull this off, if you were really smart, all I did was copy parts of about the third slide here. If we can pull this off, wow, we can define and encourage high level of analysis quality, extend that to communicating to decision makers the implications of the limitations. Second bullet, set up a system of analysis quality definition and evaluation. We can define the thing. Jeez. Again, I said the Boolean union and the separate ones. Third bullet, make decision makers aware of all the considerations. Like I said, clients in federal agencies I've worked with are in the main delightful and intelligent people, but they're not analysts. Actually, some of them are. Many of them aren't, and they just don't understand. They could understand if told. They don't happen to be aware of considerations to take into account the terms of limitations of the analyses. Here's the last one, reflecting Steve Ackerland. This might be one of the most important ones. It's the last bullet, might be the important one. More broadly engage risk management practitioners and stakeholders by more effectively promoting the use of risk analysis in advising risk management decisions. Thank you, Steve Ackerland. That's it. Hey, just about on time. You see my email address, email me. You probably can tell I enjoy thinking about this. I would love to hear your comments. And there we go. Done. Brett, over to you.
Great. So let me just ask while we wrap up here. I know we often lose people right at the top of the hour. So thank you, everybody, for joining. But if you have any questions, I think John can stay for a couple more minutes if you have questions you want to type in.
I can, yes.
And we'll give folks a couple minutes to do that, or a minute or two to do that. While we are waiting to see if there are any, I will remind you again that we have the awesome annual meeting coming up in New Orleans in December. Great time to be there. And I will thank John for a fantastic webinar, an enthusiastic webinar. Thank you very much.
Oh, you can say that anyway. Enthusiastic, yes. Okay.
And we'll give everybody just another few seconds here, but I think you got them. I think you overwhelmed them with information, and and data, or rather, and future possibilities. So I think I
Good.
suspect you will get a lot of participation at the annual meeting, discussing this further with the specialty group and with the attendees.
Oh, yes. By the way, Brett, you and I should have said, come to the annual meeting and come to the roundtable that
Yes.
Applied Management is doing. That's not at all created yet. That will be doing this in a roundtable format, and we will be plugging in a lot of information that's processed out of this webinar. So
Yes.
please come.
I was setting you up for that plug. Okay.
Good. We're such a team. Yeah. Okay.
Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you again, and thank you to everybody who attended. And look for this and all the other webinars as videos up on the SRA.org website. Thank you again.
Brett. Hey, Brett, quickly, what is the next webinar?
Oh gosh, you got me. It's usually Joe might even have to jump in on this. I can't remember if it's the first or second. I think it's the first Wednesday of every month at 11 is the standard plan. But keep an eye out for your emails. We'll be sending them out, sending one out about the timing of the November webinar.
Great, very good.
All right, take care, everybody, and thank you.
Goodbye, all, and thank you.